Hello, my name's Alex.
I'm Sophie, hello. We're from East Riding Libraries. We're really sorry we can't be with you again at the moment, so we're hoping just to use this video to have a chat with you and reminisce. Sometimes you'll see both of us in the video, sometimes it might just be one.
So, I bet you can't guess what this film is going to be about. Yes, it's Christmas! So, this film is actually going to be split into several sections. So, feel free to pause it whenever you feel you want to have a chat about the things we've discussed and about your memories. Okay, so off we go with our reminiscence film about all things Christmas. We decided that the sensible way to do it was to do it in time order. So we're going to start off with what we think you probably do earliest, which is prepare your Christmas puddings and your Christmas cakes. So, Christmas puddings. How early did you make your Christmas puddings? Was there a particular date that would be Christmas pudding steaming day? I know some people have been doing them since sort of about September and then put them away to mature. So who made those Christmas puddings? Was it you, or was it maybe your mum, or maybe grandma? So yeah, who made them? And do you remember them being made? Were you able to have a stir of that mixture? Because I think that if you stirred the mixture, you could make a wish. And then of course, that's putting in the silver coin, silver sixpence. So you had to drop that in and stir that in, and then be very careful when we were eating it not to break our teeth. So cooking it, traditional way in our muslin, is to steam it. Now I do remember this happening at home because obviously the kitchen was full of steam and the windows were always covered in condensation, and it had that particular Christmas pudding smell. So there we go, so there's our Christmas pudding all ready. And now Sophie's got an example of today's Christmas puddings.
Yeah, which you don't need to steam. I think you pop these in the microwave for just a few minutes, so they can take several hours to steam, or a couple of minutes in the microwave. But I know which one probably tastes best. How about the Christmas cake? Now, I'm not a fan of Christmas cake and Christmas pudding, but Alex is.
Yeah.
But I do remember them being made. So how about the feeding of the cake? Do you remember that side of things? So it was quite often brandy that was fed into the cake every so often, or probably quite often, before it was ready before Christmas Day. And I always used to wonder how much went into the cake and how much went into the feeder. So how often was that done? And was it with brandy, or was it with a particular liquor that you liked to use, or that somebody else would have used? And then also, with your Christmas cake, how was it decorated? The traditional, or the ones that most people remember, is the marzipan with the royal icing on top, and then it had certain decorations. Now these could have been passed through your family, so you might have remembered them from when you were a childhood, and then maybe when you made the cakes themselves, you used the same decorations. I know Alex remembers what was on her cakes.
Yeah, we're going to put some pictures up at the end of this section, and there is actually a picture of the Christmas tree that I remember from going on our Christmas cake when I was a child, and it's about that big, and it's small, and it's green, and it's got plastic branches and a metal twizzle up the middle that holds it all together, but you'll see it on the pictures, and that's my overriding memory of how our Christmas cake was decorated.
So this might be quite a good time to pause it before we move on to the next section. So if you wanted to pause the film now, and you can have a little chat about your Christmas puddings or Christmas cakes growing up.
Okay, so the next thing, the start of December, is your Advent calendars. Now probably, I don't know whether you will remember having them as a child, but the first ones just had pictures behind the little doors. This is a modern version, but it does just have the pictures.
you go. So that would be door 1. Normally it would have like a religious picture behind it, your Mary or your Jesus or something.
And then possibly what you remember your children or grandchildren having, my personal favourite, the chocolate advent calendar. So behind each door there's a lovely little chocolate. And I must admit, I was never one to forget to open the doors on my advent calendar. They were always opened on the day, probably before breakfast. But there you go. Sophie didn't. Sophie managed to save hers and she'd open 3 or 4 all at once, but
You get lots at once.
yeah, I can't do that. I'm forgetful. And then moving on again, with lockdown and everything, lots of people have been getting quite creative. And the thing that is about at the moment is these handmade advent calendars, each with little pockets, so you can pop things in. That's a small chocolate coin.
Oh, I win.
Sophie's got a nice big one. Oh, so have I, look. So yes, so these, you could put chocolate in, or little sweets, toys, whatever you want in those pockets. So these are sort of the latest generation in advent calendars.
This one was actually made by somebody who comes into the library, and they made this and donated it to us, didn't they?
Yes, that was very kind.
Okay, the other thing that you might have had for Advent as well could have been an Advent candle. So rather than a calendar, do you remember lighting the Advent candle each day and watching it burn down to the next line, and then just as it got to the line, blowing it out, ready for your next day to light the candle again? And talking about candles, here's one we made earlier. You could have had an Advent crown. Now, Advent crowns could have been at home, you could have had one at school or in the church. We've made ours ourselves, so we took a wreath, and this has the 4 candles in that would be in an Advent crown, which you would light one each week of December to represent the 4 weeks of Advent, and then occasionally there would be an extra candle in the middle as well, so that could have been lit on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day possibly, but we've just gone with the 4 around the outside. Now, the other thing with Advent crowns that you might remember as well is the Blue Peter videos. So you might remember them on Blue Peter, making them out of the wire coat hangers and hanging them up, and then they'd have the tinsel round, and then it had to be fire retardant tinsel, and then they'd place the candles on as well. So you might remember the Blue Peter video.
Something else that arrived, we're thinking about the 1960s, so you might remember from your children, is the Christingle. So every part of the Christingle represents something different, and they're called different things all over the world, and probably the things mean different things in different countries. But here, the orange represents the world, and the red ribbon represents the blood of Christ. The cocktail sticks around the edges, they can be the 4 seasons, or it can be north, south, east and west. So the 4 points of the compass. Now the sweets on the end, as well as meaning that you don't stab yourself with the cocktail sticks, they also symbolise the fruits of the earth. Okay, and then in the middle we have the candle, which is representative of Jesus standing tall and shining his light over the world. Now this version has sweets on, but when I was chatting to Sophie earlier, the versions that she remembers didn't have sweets on. She had cloves stuck into hers, but they did have a particular smell that she remembers. So they do vary from place to place. So is that something that you remember, or you remember going to Christingle services with your children?
Okay, so this is a good part of the video now to pause it and talk about the things that we've just talked about. So were there any Advent traditions that you remember, or maybe some that we haven't mentioned, that you can talk about? Were there people that you met up with, or places that you went for Advent? So if you want to pause the video now and have a chat about your Advent memories.
Hello again everybody. We're now moving on to decorations. So, when did you put your decorations up? Did you do it right at the start of December, or was it wait till Christmas Eve? And do you remember, did you have a real tree or an artificial one like ours? If it was a real tree, do you remember going and choosing it, or where did that tree come from? And do you remember that smell of a real Christmas tree? Okay, so this is our library Christmas tree, and Sophie's helping decorate at the moment. So we started off with our lights. Now ours are just plain white lights, but do you remember the multicoloured lights with the little flower shades on them, or did you have lights? Do you remember maybe when you were a child, did you ever have candles on your tree? If you had lights, do you remember that yearly ritual of having to go along the string and tighten up all the bulbs because they wouldn't work, or try and find which bulb it was that had blown? So after your lights, you'd put on your tinsel. Now, did you have tinsel? Or Sophie's got some tinsel there? Or possibly, if you didn't have tinsel, did you just have maybe some strings of beads, or strings of, I've got a string of stars here and Sophie's got a string there that's sort of like beads. Did you have something like that to decorate your tree? And obviously, well, the last thing that we put on ours is obviously the baubles. Now, when I was a child, I remember having baubles that were covered in like nylon thread. I'm sure you remember that was sort of 70s bauble. But we've got some here. Sophie's got a really nice painted one with floral decorations on it. And then we've got a more traditional glass one. I mean, obviously these days you get all sorts of shapes. I mean, we've got some nice icicles that we hang on ours as well. The other thing that gets hung on the tree these days, and possibly doesn't last till Christmas, is chocolate shapes. Did you remember ever putting chocolate shapes, or in fact anything else that was edible on your tree? Maybe biscuits or something like that. Did you hang edible things on your tree? And if you did, when were you allowed to eat them? Did they have to wait till Christmas, or were you allowed to eat them as you went along? Now, last of all would be what went on the top of your tree. Now, on the top of ours, we've got a cute little angel with a woolly hat on. But did you have an angel, or a fairy, or a star? And who had the honour of putting that on the top of the tree? Was it Dad, because he was the only one that could reach, or did you have to get a ladder out? And were you allowed to balance on the top and put the topper on the Christmas tree? Okay, so now we're going to move on from the tree to the other decorations that you may have had in your house. So, paper chains. So Sophie's going to demonstrate paper chains.
Okay, so who remembers making paper chains to decorate their houses with? Now the ones that we have here have this glue on the back like you would get with an envelope. So you just lick the glue, stick it on, and then that holds. But you might remember using sugar paper or all sorts. So you might use a stapler to hold it together, or some glue or sellotape. So you might want to have a think about how you made your paper chains.
You might even have used old magazines or newspaper or anything like that to make them. Now, there's all sorts of other traditional decorations that you might have hung up. We're going to hopefully pop up a few photos to maybe prompt your memories, but there's the foil shapes that you would festoon from your ceilings. And if you were really posh, you may have like a bell shape that you opened up, it concertinaed out. You'd hang that in the middle and all your lovely foil garlands would come to the middle. You may have brought in some natural materials to decorate. You may have brought in holly, a bit of mistletoe hung by the front door. You may have had a wreath like ours. You may have actually made your own wreaths to hang on the door, or maybe you had natural garlands across the top of your fireplaces. So there's all sorts of natural materials that you might remember having brought into the house. The perennial favourite, the poinsettia. Do you remember having poinsettias in your house over Christmas? Those lovely red leaves, very festive. And the other thing that you might have had in your house was a nativity scene. They quite often have them in churches and in schools, but you may have had one in your house as well. So we're going to pause now so that you can have a little chat about the decorations that you might have had on your trees and the house decorations.
How about nativities? Do you remember being in a nativity play yourself? Maybe it was in school or in church. As you can see, I'm Mary in my homemade outfit with my baby Jesus, and this is Alex as an angel. Hello.
I'm an angel!
So maybe you remember making the outfits for your children, or the outfits for yourself, or the outfits that you may have worn. I am fulfilling a dream today because I was never Mary. I was always a star or a villager. And what were you, Alex, in your plays?
I was narrator number 4 in a pair of 1960s curtains.
So today I finally hold the baby Jesus.
And I'm an angel!
Yay. So what do you remember about nativity plays then? Like I said, maybe when you were a child or you had children yourselves, was there anything particular that you remember? Maybe quite often the kids started crying or somebody dropped the baby Jesus. Do you remember if there was any particular nativity activities that happened where you lived? In Flamborough near us, they walk a donkey down the street to the church, which is followed by the children that would be in the nativity play all dressed up. So maybe there's something like that that happened with you. So do you want to have a think about the parts that you played, or maybe the parts that your children played, and your outfits as well? Because normally you probably wore a tea towel on your head, or they could have been made from sheets.
Yeah, neck curtains for wings,
Pillow
bed
cases.
sheets,
Somebody would donate a doll for the baby Jesus.
dressing gowns for shepherds.
Oh, that's
It was
right.
always your brother's dressing gown if you're going to be a shepherd.
I've got my dressing gown tie holding on my towel on my head. So do you want to pause the video and have a little chat about nativity plays? Okay, so the other thing you might remember before Christmas or in the run-up to Christmas is going to see a pantomime. Now, it could have been Cinderella or Jack and the Beanstalk or Snow White. There were so many different ones. You may have had the Dame or the Ugly Sisters. So do you remember going to see any pantomimes? It could have been in a big theatre, or maybe your local village hall put one on, all sorts of different pantomimes. So what's your memories from those? Now, it's a bit strange because our angel from earlier seems to have gone missing, and we can't find her anywhere. So I don't know if anyone's seen her at all. Where's our angel?
She's behind you!
Oh no, she isn't.
Oh yes she is!
Oh no, she isn't.
Oh yes she is!
Oh no, she isn't.
Oh yes she is!
Oh, she is. There's our angel. Right, here's our angel again. Thank you for helping me find her. So, was there anything else that you can remember from pantomimes, other than the fun of getting involved with the shouting? Now, Alex remembers something from Hull New Theatre, was it? From a pantomime you went to see?
I always used to go to see the Hull New Theatre pantomimes with my grandma. It was a Sunday school outing that I always remember, and now this particular one don't remember what pantomime it was, but a load of spiders came onto the stage and they dropped the house lights, and then all these things fell on us sitting in the stalls. And I remember being absolutely terrified and screaming my life out because I thought it was spiders that were falling on us. And it turned out that it was the staff at the back of the stalls and they were throwing rice over the audience. But that's my overriding memory. And always the costumes were fantastic at that whole new theatre as well. But yeah, the rice that I thought was spiders is my overriding memory of pantomime.
Mine would be York Theatre Royal, and it was the famous Bericala, and he used to throw wagon wheels out each year, and I absolutely adored that. And one year I did catch one, and I still have it. I don't know what condition it's in on the inside, but it's about 30 years old.
Yeah, don't open it, Sophie.
No.
Just don't open it.
So do you want to have a pause of the video and have a chat about what you remember about pantomimes leading up to Christmas?
Now, do you remember Christmas parties? Either as a child or maybe as an adult. As a child, you may have gone to them, they may have been at school or in the local village hall. We are going to try and slot a few photos in that might jog your memory of old style Christmas parties. You maybe remember the Works Christmas party. Did your work put on good Christmas parties? Was it all paid for and a free bar, or was it something different? Was it more a dinner dance? I'm sure you'll have memories about that. Okay, so another memory you may have from your childhood is carol singing. Now, did you go door to door with a friend like I did, either raising money for charity or getting a bit extra for Christmas spending money, or did you go in a group with friends? Now, feel free to join in. We're going to attempt to sing you a carol. So, we ready, guys? 1, 2, 3. Away in a manger, no crib for a bed, the little Lord Jesus laid down his sweet head. The stars in the night sky looked down where he lay. The little Lord Jesus asleep in the hay. The cattle are lowing, the baby awakes, but little Lord Jesus no crying he makes. I love thee, Lord Jesus, look down from the sky and stay by my cradle till morning is nigh. Be near me, Lord Jesus, I ask thee to stay close by me forever and love me, I pray. Bless all the dear children in thy tender care, and take us to heaven to live with thee there.
Okay, so how about buying presents? In the lead up to Christmas, were you a last minute shopper, or were you really well prepared, and did you get everything done in plenty of time and all wrapped up ready for Christmas? So do you remember that side of things, the buying of presents? Maybe at work or some shops had a Christmas club, or you would buy the Christmas stamp so that you could save up over the year, and then you had that amount of money there ready for Christmas, because it can be quite expensive too, so it's quite nice to save up over the year. So maybe your works or a local shop had a Christmas club where you could save up. How did you wrap your presents? I have some Christmas paper here. Or maybe you used brown paper. I love using brown paper, and ribbons. Maybe you had the more natural ribbons, or did you have the ribbons and were you a curler? Did you get the scissors and curl the ribbon and make the packages look really pretty? Or were you just a really busy wrapper and as long as it was wrapped it was good? How about making lists for Santa? Maybe you made them yourself as a child, or do you remember sitting with your children or encouraging your children to write lists? So do you remember that side of things? Was there anything in particular that you really remember writing on your list? And then what did you do with the list? Did you send it up the chimney, or did you pop it in the post? And how about the cards as well, writing Christmas cards? Because that kind of went with the present side of things, and sending cards to people. Okay, so this is the end of our video. We really hope you've enjoyed looking back at the weeks leading up to Christmas and the preparations that you made. Our next video is going to be on the big day itself, so it's going to be all about Christmas Day. In the meantime, please have a look at Active Together page on our East Riding website for some craft videos that we've put together that we think you might enjoy. Thank you.